The 1920s was a decade of innovation, dance, music, fashion, excitement, and joy. But it was also a difficult time full of strife and the Prohibition. All of this while the world recovered from the Great War. It certainly has its similarities to today. I'll be your host, and while I'm no historian, I'm certainly interested in learning more about the world 1 century ago. So I'll be covering the 20s week by week as we progress through the 20s. I'd like you to join me for this study and hopefully learn something new here on the 20s in the 20s. The first week of the 1920s was a short one, as the year began on a Thursday. In the first week of January, Americans saw Harvard and Oregon University face off in the Battle of the Tournament of the Roses East-West game, now known as the Rose Bowl. Believe it or not, these are the two teams that represented the best of the best on either side of the country. Oregon makes sense, but Harvard? Yeah, they were really good at the time, and they actually won the game by 1. The city of Chicago saw raids conducted by the police on 300 locations in an attempt to, quote, wipe out Bolshevism. Additional raids were conducted by the U.S. Attorney General's office the following day in conjunction with the second Palmer raids, which were a response to the first Red Scare in the United States. The greater raids led to over 4,000 arrests in over 30 cities. This obviously led to the Attorney General Palmer making public statements to newspaper reporters explaining that it was a roundup of those who are planning to overthrow the government and seize control of the country and create a Soviet-style system to rule in its place. Sounds a lot like prime 20s material. And this was not just happening in America. There was a real war for the mind all over the world in the wake of World War I. The conclusion of World War I was difficult for Germany and led to high inflation, which was only helped along by the Bank of Germany printing another 1.4 billion marks, which was Germany's currency at the time. This economic strife would help add to the rise of certain political parties in Germany's history. The Russian Red Army increased its military numbers along the Polish border as part of the ongoing Polish-Soviet War, which had started the year before. And here's an interesting one. At the Cook County Jail in Chicago, the sheriff carried out a psychological experiment by hanging a prisoner in front of 200 of his fellow inmates. The sheriff believed that this would help to instill fear of punishment to deter repeat offenders. The governor was nonplussed. In Mexico, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake killed 648 people. If you didn't know, we weren't great at earthquakes back then. And finally, a strange fact to finish it off, the city of Yuma in Arizona saw constant rainfall for an entire day after minimal precipitation for over 45 years. According to the world-famous interwebs, it hasn't rained there in about a month now. 2020 must be a failure. And that wraps it up for this first episode of this web series. For now, it'll be slow beginnings as we get up to 100% speed on this, but I think it'll be fun to follow history and compare it to what we're seeing today. As I said, I'm no historian, so I'm learning alongside you guys. If you have any ideas, suggestions, or resources to share, feel free to leave them in the comments or get in contact with me on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.